If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hey all, welcome back to Bailey's Books. Today's review column is massive, covering 7 books, leaning towards short fiction and tales of darkness. But before I get into the reviews, I want to remind you that this column will be winding down a bit as Navarre's Book Navigator column takes over. I'll still be publishing this column occasionally, but I need to make way for my other podcast responsibilities, and Navarre's work will be more focused on Hope Punk and Solar Punk, in order to fit in with the podcast theme a little bit better. Okay, so here we go. Our first book is Apex Magazine 2021, edited by Jason Sizemore and Leslie Connor, published 2022 by Apex Book Company. This doorstopper chronicles the short fiction published by Apex Magazine in 2021, with the addition of notes from the editor or authors. This is a fantastic anthology presenting dark fiction from authors like Charles Pazer, Sam Miller, Cassandra Khaw, Cherie Renee Thomas, Rachel Swirsky, and many more. My favorite stories include Hugo nominee Mr. Death by Alex Harrow, which gives us a touching portrayal of an angel of death trying to save the life of a child. The bizarre and sad Black Box of Terra Worms by Barton Aikman. This is a tale about terraforming worms created by the human race to clear formerly inhabited planets of their history, including eating the bodies of the gods of former inhabitants. The worms then experience and recount the lives of the gods to the reader. Fantasy or science fiction? I don't know, but it sure makes for an intriguing tale. The last one I'll mention is the BSFA-nominated Dreamports by Tlotlo Samasé. Like most of her work, Dreamports cuts deep, exploring what it might be like to rent your body out, and all the problems that comes with that idea. This Dickian satire does not shy away from the darkness of the human race. Pick this one up if you like dark short fiction, diverse authors, and getting your money's worth. Okay, our second book, Everything's Changing by Chelsea Stickle, published 2023 by 30 West Publishing House. This is the shortest book on today's review list, and definitely one of my favorites. This is a chapbook of flash fiction varying between the fantastic and the realistic. The tone wavers from serious to sad to spooky to funny, but each story is heartfelt with a touch of whimsy. Some of my favorites include a story in the style of an "Am I the Asshole" post, in which the poster falls apart, literally. A Plague of Peacocks, which is exactly as it sounds. The feminist "I told you I would take your hand," and the creepy "Worship that keeps you alive." Get this one if you like finishing a book in a day, the fantastical, and feminist fiction. Okay, the third one on our list is Scarecrow Has a Gun by Michael Paul Kozlowski, published 2022 by Imbrefix Books. Now, I'm going to be transparent here. I wavered a lot on whether I would review this book. The reason is because I don't do negative reviews, but I couldn't decide what kind of review to give this book. That is an unusual case for me. I was so back and forth throughout the entire thing. On one hand, I love the premise of this book. Very Dickian. What's real? What are your memories? Is your life being secretly controlled? That type of thing. And I love that type of thing. But I hated these characters. And I'm the type of reader who needs to like one of the characters. It doesn't have to be the main character, but one of the characters has to be likable. This is not that book. Anyway, the premise is that the main character works at a large corporation in New York City. Every so often, the famous CEO calls all the widowers in the company to his office, then asks them to compete in some odd contest or another. The contest is always different, and there can only be one winner. The winner always goes on to be ultra successful. After years of trying, the main character finally wins, and that's where the book really begins. His prize is a machine that supposedly allows you to revisit your memories how they actually happened, not how you remember them, and that's key. The story slowly spirals around the main character's wife's death, as well as this prize, this technology that he gets. Read this book if you're interested in unlikable characters, contemplating reality, and mystery stories. Okay, here we go. Number 4. Turning of the Seasons, A Dark Almanac by Seb Dubinsky and J.S. Bruckelaar. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly. This was published in 2022 by IFWG Publishing International. I read this odd little book over Christmas. Classic ghost story reading time. Second only to October, in my opinion. Imagine, if you will, a collection of fables, legends, poetry, ghost stories, visions, and vignettes, all leaning toward the dark. Generally, it alternates stories and poems between the authors. All the stories are thematically linked by season, but only loosely. It's tough to go into specifics about any particular story, as the length varies from short poems to 5 or 6 pages at the longest, but they are all tasty little nuggets worth your attention. To give a few examples, there is a story about a haunted house, a story about a witch, a story about a ghost village. There's demons, curses, and so many other things like that. It was also pretty fun to read a bit of poetry. It's been a long time since I've read some poetry. Even though it tends towards the dark, there was only one story that was a little too gruesome for me. To be fair, I'm not a big fan of body horror. That's just a personal thing for me. Aside from that little bit, I really enjoyed this book. Get this one if you're a fan of strangely constructed books, the dark time of the year, and small fictions. Number 5. Weird Dream Society, an anthology of the possible and unsubstantiated in support of races, edited by Julie Day, published 2020 by Reckoning Press. This anthology was put together to raise money for the Races nonprofit, which works with immigration and immigration law, trying to ensure that the U.S. government is following the law and ensuring immigrants' human rights. If you're interested in supporting them, buying this anthology is a great start, but you can look them up pretty easy. It's spelled RAICES. Even though this book has been out for a few years, you can still pick up a copy. There is also a new book in the Dream series called Dreams for a Broken World, so keep an eye out for that. It was just published not too long ago. As always, there are just so many great stories. Authors include A.C. Wise, Jordan Cruella, Matthew Kressel, James Patrick Kelly, Premi Muhammad, Sophia Somatar, A.T. Greenblatt, and so many other great short fiction writers. It's impossible to go wrong with any of the stories. But I think my favorites are The Ghost Who Loved the Mannequin by Marianne Kirby. This is the first time I can remember reading something by her, and it was such an odd and eerie story. It's partially a love story, as you'd expect from the title, but the connection between an inanimate object and a ghost that is nearly an object itself is so unwarranted. It's hard to put words to it. The story is like one of those odd ice cream flavors that shouldn't work, but kills it. If nothing else, the story embodies the ephemeral nature of the world. Another of my favorites was Thin Places by Gemma Files. Hers is a name I've heard bandied about on occasion, but not an author that I've read. This is another creepy story about the ephemeral, but this time it includes a creepy aunt that may or may not be related, a disappeared child, and a forest. Though not much said is about the forest, I'm willing to bet that around every stump and in every shadow, a Bigfoot or ghost lies in wait to scare the hell out of you. This story was atmospheric, sad, and unsettling. I'm glad I finally got around to reading this one. It's a great collection for a great cause. Go out, pick it up if you want to push back against the man, explore the ephemeral, or want to be set on edge. Okay, book number 6. Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus and Other Tales Collector's Edition by Mary Shelley, published 2021 by Flame Tree Press. So, I never expected to be reviewing Frankenstein 200 years after it was published, but here we are. Flametree kindly sent me the collector's edition of this famous book. It starts with an introduction by Dr. Sarah Faulkner, an expert in 19th century women writers and the culture that shaped their work. That is followed by the seminal story, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. Then Transformation and the Mortal Immortal, also by Mary Shelley. Prometheus Bound by, and God help me with this name, Aeschylus, Aeschylus, if you're interested. And then finally, it ends with a list of Mary Shelley's work with a glossary. I'm not going to review the actual story of Frankenstein itself, as I'm sure greater minds have done a better job than I could ever do. But I will say that the book is beautiful, with a green and yellow drawing of the classic movie of Frankenstein with foil embellishments in gold-edged pages. It's a handsome addition and a great gift for a horror fan in your life. I recommend checking it out if you're a book collector or have a particular fascination with Frankenstein. It's the nicest edition that I've ever seen. Okay, and now our seventh and final book for this review column, Robotic Ambitions by Apex Book Company 2023. I was about to publish this column when I was contacted by Apex asking me to review the first story in their new Robotic Ambitions anthology. You may be thinking, I've never heard of this anthology. That's because the Kickstarter is starting on February 21st. The story was fantastic. It was called A Still Life by Elliot Wink. I'm completely unfamiliar with Elliot Wink, but if this story is any indication, they are a hell of a good short story writer. The story is about two robots who take care of a hotel. Lydia is a cleaner, and the other, Addie, runs the desk. Addie is the face of the hotel, as it is fond of reminding the reader. The story mostly follows Addie, flipping back and forth between her creation and the current time of 2201. Mostly, it was about how she and Lydia pass the days after humans seemingly disappear, creating a touching meditation on repetition and mortality. If the rest of the stories are this good, then this anthology will be well worth supporting. Half of the stories will be acquired through invitation, and the other half via submission. So far, they have our very own Agenichevwe Donald Ekpeki lined up, as well as Elliot Wink, of course, Mary Vibert, Lavi Tidar, Izzy Wasserstein, Danny Cherry Jr., Renan Bernardo, and Premi Mohammed. If this interests you, keep an eye out on Kickstarter on the 21st of February. Okay, and that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed these reviews. Let us know what you think. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Mastodon. And always feel free to rate and review. Thanks.